Hi, I'm Caity from Quilt Beginnings in Dublin, Ohio, and we love to train on Berninas here. So this video, we're going to do an overview of your new 7 series, 5 series, or 4 series machine. We did all the threading and basic maintenance in another video, so be sure to check that one out. But this is going to walk you through what all those different buttons are on your machine, how to navigate the screen a little bit, and just that first intro to what your machine can do. So I'm going to start by giving you an overview of the machine. We're on the 590 here, but it has all the same buttons and icons that are on the 7 series and the 4 series. There might be some individual differences on your machine, but all of the images mean the exact same thing. We're going to start with the feed dogs. On the right hand side of the machine, just over where you have your foot control plugged in, there's just a metal button that lowers your feed dogs. When I go to raise those feed dogs back up, they're not going to pop up right away, but they will as soon as I take a stitch. Next, I want to talk about the freehand system. This is one of the best features of a Bernina, in my opinion. The freehand system can be a little bit tricky to get in, but it's a mechanical system that's going to raise and lower your presser foot and lower your feed dogs at the same time. I just have to know roughly what angle I'm trying to put it in at. If I try to put it in straight on, it's not going to fit. I want it about at this angle, and I just sort of wiggle it in until it engages. Now when I'm sewing, I can use my knee to raise and lower that presser foot. I almost always use my Bernina Free Hand System. Your machine comes with an extension table. Extension table is very easy to put on. It just slides straight across and snaps into place. This circle is your release to slide it right back off. Just make sure your presser foot is up when you're doing this. A little bit about the buttons on the machine. On this left-hand side, we have a needle up-down and a pattern end button. The pattern end is going to be really useful when we get into decorative stitches. Underneath that, we have our speed slider. This is really the max speed limit for your machine. If you are not confident in how fast you want to go, you can turn that way down and it's only going to let you go at a really reasonable speed. For the speed demons, you can turn it all the way up and you can fly. Underneath that, we have a go button. When it's green, that means it's ready to sew. So don't press this button unless you want your machine to sew. Underneath that, we have our presser foot lift and lower. The 4 series machines have a manual presser foot lift that's behind that presser foot. On the 5s and 7s, you just use this button to raise and lower your presser foot. Under that, we have our scissors, which are our thread cutter. At the end of a seam, I always use my scissors. It snips and will also raise my presser foot when I'm done sewing. And below that, I have my manual reverse. As long as I'm pressing that reverse button, my stitch on that screen is going to show that it's going backwards. As soon as I let go of the reverse, I'm sewing forwards again. So as long as I'm holding my reverse button, I'll be sewing backwards, but it's really for that manual reverse. On the right-hand side of the screen, we have the multifunction knobs. These are wonderful knobs that really allows you to do a lot of editing to your stitches and see those changes on the screen. The top one is for your width, the bottom one is for your length. So as I change the width on a straight stitch, it turns into a zigzag. If I go to a zigzag stitch and I adjust that width, my screen is going to show me how wide my new stitch is going to be. When I change the length knob, my zigzag gets much, much longer, or I can really make it a lot shorter and go to a satin stitch. That is super cool. Underneath that, I have my needle position. So if I go back to a straight stitch, I notice that all of the changes that I made previously are still there. If I just want to completely go back to the default, I can hit that clear button and it takes me all the way back to the default setting. Now I can use my needle position buttons to adjust the position of my needle, and I see that straight stitch move to the left or move to the right up to 9 different positions on these 9mm machines. So now we're going to navigate some of the icons on your screen. This top icon is the tension. The tension is automatically set by your Bernina for any of the different stitches that you do. So as I select different stitches, I see that that tension number is changing. It means that I really don't have to think about tension very much. There are times that I might want to adjust it if I'm using different thread, different material, something sort of unexpected, then I might need to do some manual adjustments. If I do, I just touch on that icon and I can raise or lower the top tension. You notice that as I change my setting, a yellow square shows up around my tension number. When I hit the X, my tension number is still yellow. Anything that I do to change this stitch from the default is going to show up in yellow, so then I know that I've made some adjustments to it. Just like before, if I want to go back to default, I can hit the clear button and it will reset all of my settings. The other option, if I ever wanted to go back, say that I've adjusted my tension up, I have a yellow number around it, but I've made some other changes that I want to keep, I can just go to whatever is yellow, touch whatever is yellow, and it sets that item back to default. I can X out and I'm back on my screen. The next item down is my presser foot selection or recommendation. For the 590, the 790, they actually have a presser foot selection option. That means that I can tell this machine what presser foot I'm using, and it's going to know what I can and can't do with that presser foot. On the 770 and the 4 series machines, this just has a lot of information about the different presser feet that are available to use for each stitch. I can X out of that menu and I'm back to normal. The next item down is my presser foot pressure. If I touch on that, just like before, I can make adjustments. I might want to lower the pressure if I'm on a very thick layer of fabric, or if I'm doing something really fine and gauzy, I can increase that pressure. Most of the time, I'm going to leave it to the default. The next item down is my stitch plate and needle option. If I touch on that, I can actually set whether I'm using a twin needle or a variety of different needles. What's nice also is they have a needle minder, because I forget a lot of the time what needle's in my machine and how long it's been in there. I can go to the needle minder and I can actually tell my machine, say I'm using a universal 90, and it's going to remember that. So when I put my machine to sleep and I went on vacation and I come back 3 weeks later and I forget what needle's in there, I can go back in and it's going to tell me what needle I'm using. In this menu as well, in that stitch plate selection menu, I see that I am in my needle minder option. These little indicators up here, those are called the breadcrumbs. I just want to go back one level to that main needle area, because here I have the option too of selecting what stitch plate I want to use. When I have my 9mm stitch plate on, I'm able to use the full width of my machine. For the machines with the 5.5mm stitch width, that's going to be the maximum stitch width that I can use. If I put a single hole stitch plate on, I can come in here and tell my machine that I have my single hole stitch plate on. When I X out of that, this zigzag has now become a straight stitch, because my machine knows that it doesn't want me to break a needle when I have my single hole stitch plate on. So when I put my single hole stitch plate on, I make sure to tell my machine that's what's on, and then I don't have to remember it. It prevents me from breaking a needle or doing some damage that way. For now though, I've got my 9mm on, so I'm going to put it back to the 9mm so I have the full width that I can use. The next indicator down is my feed dog indicator. Right now my feed dogs are up, so I have my feed dogs, my zigzag, up above that line of fabric. If I put my feed dogs down, it turns yellow and it shows the zigzags underneath, and that just is a visual reminder for me that my feed dogs are down. When I put them back up, even though my feed dogs haven't come up physically, the indicator is showing that they're up, so when I take a stitch, I know that it's going to be feeding my fabric for me. The next one down is my bobbin light indicator, and that's just going to flash red when I'm getting low on bobbin so that I know it's probably time to get ready to wind a bobbin. Another safety feature of the Bernina, inside of the needle minder area, when I go to set that I'm using a twin needle and I tell it exactly which width of twin needle I'm using, the 4, 6, or 8 millimeter, let's say I have an 8 millimeter twin needle on, when I X out, it's going to really limit my width of stitch so that I don't break my twin needle. Those are so far apart that I can't even do an effective zigzag. Say that I'm using a 4 millimeter, it's still going to protect my width to limit how wide that zigzag can get to protect my twin needle and protect my machine. Next, we have our needle stop position. When I touch the needle stop position, it's going to change to either down, where when I stop sewing, my needle will stop down in the fabric, or up. When I stop sewing, the needle will stop up from the fabric. So I have a lot of control over where that needle stops every time that I stop sewing. I love to sew with my needle stop down. That way I can use my free hand system to pivot, and I can just keep on sewing very easily. Next, I have a couple of numbers here that are just the dimensions of the stitch. So when I'm using my multifunction knobs, that number is going to tell me exactly how wide my stitch is, or how long. What's really nice, and we're going to go into this in a little more detail later, is that I have a lot of memory features here where I don't have to write down those numbers, they're just informational. I can actually save my favorite stitches with these dimensions memorized in my machine. Once again, I can see that the numbers are yellow where I've made changes from the default. So when I hit clear, it all goes back to default. But say that I like how wide it is, but I want to get back to my default length. If I touch that yellow number and I touch that yellow number, it puts that length back to the default while keeping my other dimension what I put it to. I can X out of that, get back to my first menu. Next we see this eye. We're going to go into a lot more detail on that in a later video, but when I touch on the eye, it gets me to all my stitch editing features. So those are really fun, and we're going to go through all of those in more detail. I can hit that X, get back to my menu. This plus down here, we're also going to feature in a later video. It's my combination mode. So if I want to do combinations of decorative stitches, that's where my plus is. Sometimes people get into this mode and they don't see any stitching on their screen, and it just gets a little confusing. So if you see a white square around that plus, you are in combination mode and you might get some funky results. Go ahead and touch that, you get right back to the regular stitching mode. Next, we'll talk a little bit about stitch selection. I have all of these tabs on the right side of my screen that are basically different stitch folders. Right now, I have my utility stitches highlighted. If I go to my squiggle, which is my decorative stitches, I get a whole set of subfolders. You can see that there's a couple of folders towards the bottom that aren't fully visible. I can actually scroll to see what's in those folders. If I select, let's say, this 101 folder, that's where all of my decorative stitches are. There are a lot of decorative stitches in this machine, and if I want to see this menu a little bit bigger to get a better idea of what's going on, I can touch this arrow, and it gives me a much bigger view and a better ability to see and choose what decorative stitch I want. I think these tulips are really cute. The next folder down are my alphabets. Just in the same way, I have a couple of extra folders down there, a few different languages, different things like that. When I go into each of the fonts, I have my whole alphabet. I don't speak Greek. This is not necessarily one that I would pick, but you can use your breadcrumbs to go back to that original folder and pick any letter that you want. Letters are definitely best used in combination mode, because if I just put in an A, I'm going to get a whole string of A's, and it's just going to sew A's until the cows come home. So we'll get more into combination mode and really monogramming and personalizing things at a later time. My next option down are my buttonholes. Buttonholes are so fun on this machine and on all the Berninas, and we're going to talk through a lot of those later. The next one down are my quilting stitches. So I've got my blanket stitch. This is one that you might really want to customize if you like to do applique, customize it to your preferred width and length, save it into a favorites folder, which we'll talk about soon, and that way you always know exactly where your favorite blanket stitch is. Next, we have our heart, which is our favorites folder. This is where we'll go to save stitches, to take out our favorite stitches and use them again, or to delete our maybe not so favorite anymore stitches. On the 4 and 5 series, your home button is over on the right-hand side here. It looks like a little house. On the 7 series, on the 770 it's down here, and on the 790 it is over here. When I go into there, these are the same icons you'll see on those 7 series, but here in the 4 and 5, they're inside of your home option. This is where you'll go to switch between sewing and embroidery, and also to access your settings. The gears are your settings, and we're going to go through all of those menus in a lot more detail later. Next, we have our tutorial button. It looks like a little book. When I touch the little book, it gives me information on many different techniques. It's like an entire reference guide at my fingertips. So if I want information about my machine or about different techniques, I can see, for example, quilting. All these different pieces of information on echo quilting. Lots of information. I can X out and go back home. So lots of good information in there. Next, we have a little mannequin. This is our creative consultant. When I touch my creative consultant, it's going to give me lots of different fabric choices and then different techniques inside of there, because my machine has a very large range of options for different techniques. So say I don't know necessarily what all these icons mean, I can touch my question mark. A little question mark comes up on my screen, so I know I'm asking a question now. That top left one is lightweight woven, so it's a type of fabric. This next one is a medium weight woven and then a heavyweight woven, but I don't have to memorize that. I can just touch my question mark and see medium weight woven. So if I go into one of these, say the medium weight woven, then these are different techniques that I'm doing on that type of fabric. Say I want to do applique on a medium weight woven fabric. These are the different settings that my machine is recommending to me. So it's recommending to me whoops, I went to a different technique. Back to applique. It's recommending to me a certain type of needle, a certain weight of thread, a certain presser foot. It's recommending that I use a stabilizer and that I use my blanket stitch 1309. What's really nice now is I can just hit the check and it's going to set all of my settings to what I just had up on my screen. So I have everything ready to go. I just have to put in the right needle and the right thread, make sure I've got a stabilizer under my fabric, and I can go ahead with that applique. If I go back home, next I have an eco mode. And this is just a really nice energy saving mode if I don't want to completely turn off my machine. My lights have gone off. It's kind of in hibernation until I come back to it, but I didn't lose anything or any of my temporary memory along the way. One other thing to mention is I have a help guide at my fingertips at all times. This question mark, when I touch it, no matter where I am in my machine, I get the blue question mark screen, and then I can touch anything if I forget what it does. So this eye, it's information. It says a display with possible functions appears. Kind of reminds me what it does. Again, if I have a question on what's this icon, it's my presser foot pressure. So you don't have to remember or rewatch this video or any of that. You can just ask your machine and it will tell you. So let's talk a little bit about Bernina Feet. Each of these feet is a number 1 foot. Bernina numbers all of their feet based on what technique they're designed for. So the number 1 foot, they all do the same thing and they're all used for the same purpose. But you notice there are some differences. The one without any letters behind it, that's designed for a 5.5mm machine. So if you have a 9mm machine, this foot is not going to cover your whole feed dogs. Even though you can fit it on your machine, you probably don't want to use that one. This is perfect for the 5.5mm machines. Next, you have the C foot. The 1C stands for coated, and it has this little ice cube on the side. That ice cube codes the foot to tell the machine that it is safe to stitch a full 9mm stitch width. If you put this number 1 foot on your 9mm machine, it won't let you stitch your full 9mm because it doesn't have that little ice cube telling it that it's safe. So you would want to use the 1C foot on your 9mm machine to make use of that full width of your stitch. Next you have the 1D foot. The D stands for dual feed. The dual feed is a built-in walking foot on your Bernina machine. You can tell that it's built for the dual feed because there's a cutout for that built-in walking foot to go. It's like a third feed dog for your machine. I love to use the 1D foot, or the D foot in general. So there's a 97D, that's your 1/4 inch foot for the dual feed. There are lots of different D feet out there, and anytime that you're using the D foot, you want to use the dual feed. On the C foot, you certainly would not use the dual feed because there's nowhere for it to go. And I'll show you how to put on the feet and how to engage that dual feed in a moment. So I'm going to start by removing my 1C foot and putting on my 1D foot. To remove a presser foot, I take this lever in the back and just push it towards the back. My foot falls right off. Very easy to take on and off. To put on my 1D foot, I want the pyramid on the machine to go into this hole. So here's the pyramid. Slide on the foot, pull down the lever, and it's locked in. With the dual feed foot, the 1D foot, I pull down and forward to engage the dual feed. To remove it, I pull down and back. One other thing to mention about the Bernina Feet is they come with a screw on the back. These screws very often, well, not too often, but sometimes they can get loose and kind of fall off the foot if you're sewing along and it's not completely tightened down. So sometimes you might find a screw while you're sewing and say, where did that screw come from? Probably from one of your feet. What that screw is for is it allows you to attach the seam guide or the quilting guide to the foot. This is really useful if you wanted to do straight line, parallel line sewing. You can use this guide, but if you're not using it, you can just take it out and keep that screw in the foot so you don't lose it.